If you guys love breaking, ripping packs, this one's for you. What's up, guys? So today I want to talk about breaking and ripping packs. And before I get in too far into that, this is a topic that I brought up on my TikTok page there several months ago. And I'll be honest, it got personal for a lot of people, and it got hairy for others that got offended. It went, I guess, semi-viral for TikTok on a card video. It was like 80-some thousand views. And all I said opening up was, do not buy $1,000 box cards. And the reason I brought that up is because there's a ton, and I mean an absolute ton, I'm sure by now you're aware of it, of breaking channels on the internet. There are people who are, it's like every corner of the internet is a breaking channel. And people are obsessed with it. So I thought, hey, this comes up a lot. Let's go ahead and address it. So let's dig in. First, I want to give a disclosure. In this video, I am not, under any circumstances, trying to attack anyone who is involved in breaking, either from the person buying into the breaks or the person who is hosting the breaks themselves. That is not my intention. My intention is to speak to a specific group of people, and to also kind of inform others who are considering doing that. Well, we'll talk about that. I also want to talk to the people who feel the incessant need to constantly buy boxes and packs and rip things open. It can be a problem. It can be a big problem. So first, let's go ahead and address the big issue in the room. The majority of the card hobby space when it comes to breaking and ripping wax has become nothing more than a casino. It's gambling. There's no easy way around it. And again, I'm sure I'll get something hateful eventually because I did everywhere else. It is a gambling culture. In no way, shape, or form is it collecting. Is it responsible collecting? Is there anything positive about it at all, except if it's entertainment? It's very, very important to make that distinction. If you're spending the same money, instead of going to the movies, instead of, going out and buying a board game, if you decide that you want to spend your money on breaking or, ripping wax instead of those things for entertainment purposes, that absolutely makes sense. I mean, we all love to do that. It's fun. Who knows what you're going to pull? It's the thrill factor, right? It releases the chemicals in your brain that says, hey, this is exciting. The same as if you're playing a slot machine. So the reason this is personal to me is because in my 20s especially, I was addicted to slot machines. And it was a problem, right? Luckily, it didn't become too large of a problem to where it just absolutely ruined me. But I'm fully convinced that there are so many people with maxed out credit cards, especially college-age kids. Even before they get their life started, it's piled up. They're buying so many boxes of cards, trying to get a big hit. They're trying to buy into breaks because they're bored sitting on their phone at home. And it's become a culture where it is addiction-based and thrill-based. Trying to get that hit is a problem. There's nothing wrong with, in general, wanting that to happen, right? If we do open a pack of cards, if we do, for whatever reason, use that as our entertainment purposes and we buy into a break, you want that hit, right? I mean, that's what gives you the big hoorah moment of this is awesome. But at the same time, it is ruining people. And that's where I want to touch base, especially if you're new to the hobby. I'm new to the internet, the channels, the YouTube, the TikTok. That's something that I've dabbled in here or there. But I'm not new to collecting, right? We've all been here. If you're a collector, if you've been doing this for any number of years at all, you know how this process goes. One of the common arguments that people use, is, and I've heard some of the big influencers say this out loud, and they're right to a certain extent. We all, collecting hasn't changed that much. Back I grew up opening packs in the 80s. So during the junk wax era, you're ripping 32 packs in a box that you didn't pay that much money for. And it's fun. You're like, my favorite set, for some reason, my favorite set during this period is 87 Topps. It's the wood grain. You're chasing the Bo Jackson and Barry Bonds rookie cards. That was a lot of fun for me. I was born in 87, and it was available at most retail stores when I was growing up. You go to Big Lots, they have boxes and boxes and boxes. So I loved ripping this set. I had a ton of them. It's fun. But I wasn't paying that much money for it. And they're also in small town in West Virginia. There's not a lot of card shows. There's not, maybe you may find somebody with a little, middle of the mall kiosk that had cards to buy. But for the most part, there weren't a lot of options as far as going to a card store, picking up singles, and there was no internet to buy them from, so you weren't shopping on eBay. To find the cards, you had to open the packs, or you had to know someone who had them. You had to find somewhere to go to buy them. It was not the same. So to try to compare that to today's world, where you go and you buy, I don't even know what the price is anymore because I don't buy it. It's $200 something, $300 for a box of Topps Chrome. You get a couple packs in that box, and half of the ones you don't even want. People are throwing their base cards in the trash now, right? They're not even donating them. They're just shredding them or giving them away, catching them on fire. And I understand it becomes frustrating that you're trying to, the base cards aren't worth much. But you're chasing a hit. You're not trying to find a player. And if we're honest about it, that's absolutely true. And the reason is because if you actually wanted that player's card, someone most likely has already pulled one, and you can go on eBay or whatnot, wherever it is, and find that card, bid on it, and win it, and bring it home. You want to find the hit card. You hope you get one of the big ones. And like I said, there's nothing wrong with that desire, but I think we've normalized gambling in the hobby and masqueraded it as something else. It's not what it is. The breaking channels, it is insane the amount of money that's going through in breaking channels. It's no different. I understand that that's fun, but we have to be honest with each other, especially because, as many people are entering the hobby, we can't just lie and say, that this is normal and this is a healthy thing, right? Collecting the baseball card hobby, trading card hobby, it is a healthy hobby to have, and it can be fruitful. You can have some investing positives. You can have some flipping positives. You can sell and trade and have fun. You can build a network. But there's some big dangers in the hobby as well. And I think it's important that we highlight those. There are a lot of people who do it right. Some breaking channels, they're very fair, and the prices are very good. And it allows collectors an opportunity to buy a pack that they normally may be priced out of. They can't afford to buy a huge box, but they can buy one pack on Whatnot or whatever. That makes sense. I understand why people want to do that. But a lot of it is boredom. It's no different than playing a game on your phone at night or watching YouTube videos. You're looking for something to do. You want to buy a card. I do the same thing on eBay looking for singles. If I'm sitting there, my family goes to bed close to 9 o'clock. I'm sitting there, I'm checking eBay saying, hey, let's find some cheap singles and get them in the mail. It's just something that you do just to pass the time. And all of a sudden it becomes, you're bidding on things like crazy. You're buying into breaks. You're staying up late. You're setting schedules, and now you're basically a dedicated gambler at that point because you don't know what you're going to get. That's not collecting. It's just not. It doesn't mean that you're not collecting. You obviously can do both, right? You can be collecting cards and be involved in breaking and be ripping wax. It's not all inclusive. You can be involved in separate things. What I'm trying to say is that this is not a normal component of collecting as far as a hobby is concerned. This is for people who are trying to get a big hit for financial gain. They're trying to flip. They're trying to, there's a 100 different reasons. But I think it's very important to distinguish the difference between all of them. On TikTok, I bring this up quite often because of my previous history with the gambling addiction. It hits home to me. I notice it quick. It's very obvious to me. The signs are exactly the same. And then I started getting stories in. I had one gentleman who his marriage was gone. And I mean absolutely gone. He had spent so much money on breaks. He couldn't even afford to pay his house. So far behind, his electricity is getting cut off. And he's still going and buying into breaks. If we can't see the correlation there between gambling and buying into breaks, and that was just one story. I mean, there were hundreds and hundreds of comments along the same lines. I'm really struggling with this. This is a problem. Almost to the point where I fully predict there's going to be counseling and addiction services eventually for the card hobby. I would not make me sad if they started advertising on there as warnings, because you see families absolutely getting destroyed. People losing their homes, their cars. Some of these breaks you buy into, it's a mortgage payment in a week. That's low for some people. It blows my mind. For new collectors who are coming into the hobby, I highly suggest that either one, you have someone to hold you accountable. A spouse, a friend in the hobby, somebody that you network with, and say, hey, here's my budget. This is what it is healthy and financially, I'm able to spend this money and it's not going to hurt me. Can you help hold me accountable to that? That is extremely important if you're going to be involved in those things. I think we're moving into a realm where it is so short-term financial based that people can't see anything else, right? It's get it, rip it, grade it as fast as possible, flip it in the next 24 hours, on to the next one, without a care in the world of the player they're even looking at, right? And then they claim to be, sports fans, but the reason they're sports fans is to try to figure out who's first Bowman to buy the next season. It's not because they actually love the sport, but they're going to be only looking into the sports to figure out what players to buy next, or what the next hype cycle is for the next quarterback coming up. I mean, it can be a healthy balance if you can master those things, but I think the majority of people really struggle with mastering anything like that. So it's important for us to distinguish the difference between collecting as a hobby, as a community, and the gambling culture of the hobby, which is extremely dangerous. And as I said, we can't compare the two. People are not opening packs to find a player anymore because the options are endless. There's so many different platforms to find the players you're actually going to collect. It's not necessary anymore to rip wax unless it's for entertainment. And that's just the truth. I mean, and like I said, I promise you I am not trying to offend anyone. I'm not trying to call anybody out. There's no individuals I have in the back of my mind. It's just something where I have seen the results, especially in middle America where the income is lower, to where it is ruining people. I mean, it costs, if not as much, more than gambling or drugs. For some people, it is vastly more. One pack of cards takes 15 seconds to go through. They're like 6 packs in a box. I mean, so do the math. One pill takes longer than that, and it's probably cheaper. So let's not pretend like it's not a problem. At the same time, there is enough room for all of it. There's enough room for all of us to kind of be involved in the hobby together, to share and enjoy in those things, and also collect responsibly. So I don't want to discourage people from buying packs if that's what they want to do for entertainment. I really don't want to discourage that, because that is part of the fun. That is part of the fun for all of us as we grew up to open these packs. But I want to make sure that we understand and distinguish the difference between the way it was and the way it is. And I'm not trying to sound like the old heads that come in and say collecting's not the same as it used to be and all this kind of stuff. It has evolved, and with that has come additional complications. These just happen to be those. I want to be very careful here because people really get offended on this one, and I understand why. They take it personal, and it's probably a fight, or at least one or two fights they've had with their spouse about spending too much on buying boxes, and this also applies to the trading card hobby. People turn it into memes online and make joke videos about it of, their wife comes home and they've got too many packs out on the counter because they weren't supposed to buy them. And that's fun. It's silly, but there's a lot of truth to that. And I think it happens to all of us more than we think. So on a positive spin, while those things are extremely dangerous, it also leads to a lot of people being exposed to the hobby that we all love as collectors, whereas they might not have been before. Even if their intentions were not pure, a lot of good things have come from not pure intentions. How many men have showed up to a bar looking to get hammered drunk, met their wife, settled down, had kids, and, just the same kind of logic. I mean, something good can happen from these things. So I don't want it to be perceived as if this is all doom and gloom. That some of this actually, it absolutely is, especially for those who have more of an addictive personality. If I were involved in breaks and doing those kind of things, it would be unhealthy for me. I have an addictive personality. I would very easily fall into that trap. I do not do that for that reason. And I want to encourage those of you who might to take a step back. So here's my recommendation. If you're new or getting back into the hobby, as we all have at some point, I recommend that you take at least 90 days. Do not buy into any breaks. Do not buy any boxes of cards thinking you're going to get the next big one for the first 90 days. At that point, get your feet wet. Buy a few singles. Go to a few card shows. See if you can find your local card shop. Start digging into content. Find YouTubers who are putting out information that is extremely helpful. Get up to speed on how the hobby works now versus the way it did before you start divulging in these expensive parts of the hobby. There are ways to enjoy it without going crazy and being too expensive. Breaking can be very dangerous. I highly suggest permanently, and I said this on a previous video on TikTok, and there's a lot of sports card shops that their biggest money maker is selling wax. And then on top of that, there are a lot of breaking channels that supplement their income and feed their family on what they make from breaks and hosting. And it is not my intention in any way, shape, or form to try to take business away from them in principle. That word is key here, because I do want to take away some business, not take away, not add to. I don't want to add to additional business for them, for collectors who are just entering the hobby, because it will suck them in. It'll get dangerous. Next thing you know, credit cards are maxed out, fights with spouses, and that's not what needs to happen. So if you spend less on boxes, if you spend less on breaking, and it happens to hurt the card shop's bottom line and the breaker's bottom line, I apologize from the deepest part of my heart, because I am not trying to take food off of your table through encouraging this. It is purely just for those who cannot do it responsibly. And I think there's a massive, massive need for that. And other big voices in the hobby, I'm not one of those yet, have been mentioning things along on similar lines, saying, is this a problem? Is it becoming an issue? And I think they all agree that it absolutely is. So it's not just my opinion here. This has been talked about. It was after I put that video out that got a lot of attention. I was kind of disappointed that other people weren't talking about it. And then all of a sudden it became a topic. So, and I'm not saying I caused that. I'm just saying it became one. Please be careful. Maybe delayed gratification works for a lot of different things in life. It helps us to save money to get things that are important, save up for kids' cars in college and upgrading their homes. It also works for making sure we don't divulge in addictive things in the card hobby. You're grown men and women. You can do what you want. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm making a suggestion. You're big boys and girls, do what you want to do. I'm just saying, from someone who's had an addiction in the past, not related to sports cards, it looks very, very similar. And I can see where it's going to become a larger problem in the future. So, I appreciate the support so far. I know this is going to be a long journey for me trying to grow a channel. And it's probably not going to grow very much with me talking about controversial things and making a stand on certain principles that I believe in. But I really don't care. I do this for fun. If it does eventually lead to something where I get to put ribeyes on the table instead of sirloins, then that's awesome. But if not, I enjoy this as a hobby just enough to where I really don't care if it ever does that. So hopefully I didn't offend anyone. If I did, it is what it is. It's the internet. I got some other stuff coming out soon. I'm going to start doing some different kind of episodes on YouTube and try to get some of the more entertaining stuff out instead of just the podcast style talking. So, but so far you guys have been awesome, and I keep getting people coming in that say that Mike recommended them come from his page on the video he put out, and I just want to mention it again. I can't thank that enough, because that was a very warm reception from the hobby. Wasn't expected. This morning my wife had already went to bed last night, and I told her this morning, I was like, hey, one of my favorite show is Chasing Cardboard. So, I was like, hey, I got a shout out last night from Mike or whatever, and so she was excited for me, all that kind of stuff. But it's cool when you see people who are big or experienced and well known in the hobby who welcome new people into the environment and also try to encourage and help them grow. That's something I've not had before in the areas that I've lived in. I'm just now starting to find that kind of community. I used to laugh when, I think Tyler on his episodes all the time, he always asks people, do you have a collector's community? Do you have people that you whatever? And people just kind of look at him like he's stupid, Like, no. Most people don't even know that you collect, right? So I'm just now discovering that world actually does exist. It's not a unicorn. And so I encourage you, maybe do that first. Find that community. Find somebody to hold you accountable. Kind of let them know, hey, I want to collect. I want to be involved in this, but I don't want to go crazy. Would you help me kind of set expectations? An accountability partner is kind of what you're looking for. But then also the information that is put out online from content creators in the hobby. Some is pretty selfish and there's a few narcissists out there. But then there are some other ones who are really concerned about people and the hobby itself and the love of the game, the love of the sports, the collections. And that's very genuine and pure content. It's what I really love. So appreciate it again, guys. And we'll keep them coming. Catch you on the next one. See ya.